The mood in the Senate hall was already poisonous following the morning's shocking publication of the Epstein files. Hillary Clinton immediately addressed the obvious issue, her tone saturated with disdain for the topic at hand. "Mr. Director, I trust you do not plan to consume this committee's time with online gossip concerning flight manifests and that shamed financier," she stated while fixing her microphone. The allegations concerning DO 174 and these supposed gatherings are simply diversions meant to tarnish public officials with unfounded guilt by association. She stared at the recording devices with rebellion, clearly thinking the press would protect her from the trafficking scandal's repercussions. Kash Patel remained unmoved by her rejection, his attention fixed wholly on the link between authority and depravity. The mistreatment of children and the trafficking networks used by the privileged are not diversions. Mrs. Clinton, they are proof of a decay that reaches the highest levels, he replied quietly. When influential individuals show up on those logs and quiet the victims, it demonstrates the precise culture of exemption we are gathered here to examine today. He pushed an introductory folder aside, indicating that the Epstein matter was only the starter before the main entree. You might desire to divorce your past from those documents, but the American citizenry observes the identical cycle of shielding the powerful in every instance. Hillary Clinton thought she had eliminated every shred of evidence, but she was wrong. She walked into the Senate Intelligence Committee room with the demeanor of an owner surveying her estate. Why would she think differently, given that she had walked these halls for 3 decades? She had served as Secretary of State, a senator, a party nominee, and arguably the most formidable woman in American political history. The stone corridors of the Russell Senate Office Building felt as if they had been named in her tribute. Her legal defense team, comprising 4 attorneys from Williams and Connolly, the most expensive agency in the Capitol, circled her like a security guard. Her tailored suit was a metallic gray, her hair was flawlessly styled, and her chin was positioned at that exact angle the cameramen loved. She had actually asked for this meeting herself, and virtually insisted upon it. When FBI Director Kash Patel declared his audit of the Crossfire Hurricane files, Clinton's group saw an opportunity to begin an assault. They planned to strike Patel publicly, brand him a biased amateur, and control the story before he could introduce the reality. The observation deck was packed, while liberal campaigners wore coordinated shirts stating "Protect Democracy." Major channels such as CNN, MSNBC, and the New York Times had sent their top political correspondents. Stories concerning Patel's upcoming humiliation were already partly written on their computers. Clinton assumed her seat at the testimony desk and did not pause for official acknowledgement. "Mr. Chairman, I appreciate this opportunity to address the panel today," she began, her voice echoing with the rehearsed authority of 1,000 press conferences. She asserted that what Director Patel is inflicting on the Bureau is nothing short of a constitutional crisis. She turned to confront Patel squarely, her eyes fixing on him with the precision of someone who had stared down Vladimir Putin during talks without flinching. "You are tearing apart the globe's leading law enforcement agency to fulfill private grudges. You hold no qualifications for this position, as you were simply a mid-level legislative staffer who wrote a report. That report was widely rejected by intelligence specialists from both sides, yet you somehow utilized it to seize control of the FBI. That is not earned achievement. That is unthinking allegiance." The crowd in the balcony erupted into cheering, while numerous Democratic senators bobbed their heads in concurrence. Everything was unfolding precisely according to the plan. Clinton leaned forward, her voice becoming more cutting. "You have fired career officers who dedicated their lives to protecting this country. You have removed senior commanders consisting of men and women with decades of counterterrorism experience because they ventured to investigate your boss. You have changed the FBI from the most respected police force on Earth into Donald Trump's personal revenge unit. She let that charge settle before turning the blade deeper. Now, you are digging through old boxes looking for anything to justify this crusade against those who were courageous enough to do what you never did. You are hunting people who pursued the facts wherever they went, regardless of political outcomes. She stopped for theatrical effect while pivoting toward the lenses. Let me be absolutely explicit, Director Patel. I have given 30 years to government service. I have been probed, questioned, and examined more thoroughly than any public person in the annals of America. I was cleared on every single instance. She punctuated every syllable with a steady knock on the desk. I am not afraid of you. I'm not afraid of your documents. And the American people are not fooled by this show. A rising cheer broke out from the liberal section of the spectators. Individuals were jumping to their feet to applaud, while legacy media journalists smiled at each other. This was the iteration of Clinton they loved. Intense, brave, and commanding. The Washington Post reporter was already drafting a title about Clinton demolishing the FBI chief in a Senate confrontation. Kash Patel sat at the opposite side of the testimony table. He was smaller than many expected from viewing him on broadcasts, dressed in a black suit without a cravat. He never sported neckties, his reading spectacles were perched on his nose, and a lone yellow folder rested shut in front of him. During Clinton's whole monologue, he had not looked up one time. He was writing something on a notepad, with a look as calm as a man making a shopping list. When the applause finally faded, Patel raised his eyes. He beamed, but it was not a political smile or a camera-ready grin. It was the expression of a man who had been waiting for this exact moment. "Thank you, Mrs. Clinton," he stated, his tone surprisingly soft after her loud performance. "You mentioned my credentials, so let us review those for a moment." He uncapped his writing instrument and set it carefully on the paper. "I started my profession as a public defender in Miami. I stood for people who lacked the money for attorneys, including substance users, foreigners, and single moms accused of offenses they did not do. Then I became a federal prosecutor under President Obama, not Trump, where I sent al-Qaeda and ISIS militants to jail." He stopped to let that reality sink in. "Then I became the lead investigator for the House Intelligence Committee, where I revealed the biggest justice scandal in recent American history. Yes, I authored the Nunes report." He knocked on the binder. "Every sentence of that paper has been proven as factual." Clinton parted her lips to interrupt, but Patel raised a hand. Civil, yet enduring and crushing. "You will receive your chance, ma'am, but currently the time belongs to me." He unsealed the yellow binder. The hearing chamber, which had been buzzing with soft talk, went deadly quiet. Something about the way in which he opened it, unhurriedly and purposefully, told everyone present that whatever was inside would change everything. "You assert I am digging through ancient records," Patel stated while pulling out the initial paper. "That is interesting, because what I found was not in any normal cabinet. It was inside a secured room at FBI headquarters that nobody was meant to know about." He gazed directly at Clinton. "Room B7034, have you heard of it, Mrs. Clinton?" Clinton's face stayed frozen, but her primary lawyer moved awkwardly in his seat. "In July 2025, my squad found thousands of papers stuffed into incinerator bags inside that space. These were records relating to the Crossfire hurricane probe. They were files that were intended to have been burned." He showed a picture. "This is what we found: destruction bags and military waste bins filled with proof, piled from the ground to the roof. Someone hid them there because someone wished for them to disappear." The balcony had gone silent. Even Clinton's fans had stopped their whispering. And Mrs. Clinton, Patel went on with his tone falling deeper, every individual one of those documents traces back to you. Clinton's assured grin solidified. The pursuer had instantly become the hunted. Patel organized the papers in front of him with the methodical accuracy of a man who had built arguments against extremists. He was not hurrying because a skilled prosecutor never rushes. "Let me walk the panel through the substance of those trash bags," he started. This proof was hidden from congressional review for nearly 10 years. It was kept from the American people and kept from the Durham investigation. He lifted the first file, which was a dense pile of sheets holding FBI secret stamps. These are internal Crossfire hurricane notes from 2016. They were never shown to Congress. They were never included in the Durham summary because they were crammed into burn bags in a sealed closet. He read from the cover sheet. Source credibility evaluation for Christopher Steele listed unverified and primary subsource as untrustworthy, with a suggestion not to utilize as a foundation for a FISA request. Patel raised his head. An FBI researcher wrote this in September 2016. That was a month prior to the first FISA warrant being obtained against Carter Page. The FBI's own researcher stated the Steele file was unreliable, and someone hid that judgment in a trash bag. Clinton's head counsel leaned in. "Director Patel, my patron has no connection to internal FBI evaluations, doesn't she?" Patel pulled another paper. "This is the secret addendum of the Durham summary. It was never published to the broad population. It was found in those same burn bags." He started reciting. The Clinton team created and managed the Trump-Russia story as early as February 2016. A campaign plan note dated February 2016 cited shocking exposures of commercial links between Trump and the Russian mob. The hearing hall rustled. Several journalists stopped their keying to gaze up. February 2016, Patel said again slowly, "There was no FBI probe in February 2016. There was no evidence of Russian cooperation in February 2016. There were no FISA orders, no snitches, and there was nothing. Yet your operation was already writing the plot." He glanced at Clinton. "You created the Russia fraud, Mrs. Clinton, before any inquiry existed and before any proof existed. You made up the story first, then you went looking for someone to make it look real." Clinton sat up in her chair. "Opposition research is a normal part of political races, and opposition research is lawful." Patel concurred. "What you did afterwards was not lawful." He brought out a money diagram, a single sheet with lines connecting boxes meant to be understood by anyone seeing it. Your team paid over $12 million to the legal agency Perkins Coie. Perkins Coie paid Fusion GPS. Fusion GPS paid Christopher Steele, a former British seist who had not walked in Russia for years. Steele gathered a file of unproven charges against Donald Trump. He followed the cash path with his digit. You washed the payments through a law office so your name would not show on any FEC reports. You listed the payments as legal work, $12 million for legal work. He stared at the panel. That is the costliest legal view in the record of America. And it was not a legal view at all. It was a political tool. He lifted another paper. The Federal Election Commission probed these expenditures. They decided that your team and the DNC broke federal statutes by mislabeling them. Your operation was penalized $8,000, while the DNC was penalized $15,000 for deceiving about the intent of the funds. One Democratic lawmaker leaned toward his assistant and murmured something. The assistant shook his head gently. "But the penalty is not the felony," Patel went on. "The offense is what occurred to that file after Steele assembled it." He pulled out a schedule chart. In September 2016, your campaign consultant Jake Sullivan who is currently acting as National Security Advisor, personally updated journalists on the dossier's allegations. Before the vote, he did not just bring it up informally. He held background sessions with writers from major publications. He personally delivered the story your team had paid millions to create. In October 2016, the FBI utilized the file as the main basis for a FISA order to spy on Carter Page, an American national. A FISA order is the most strong spying instrument in the federal administration. It allows the government to watch every call, every email, every text, and every money transfer. Everything. They secured it relying on a paper your team paid for. In January 2017, BuzzFeed released the file. By then, your operation had already spent months planting it with reporters throughout Washington. The news did not emerge on its own. It was sown, grown, and then reaped at precisely the right instant. I had no power over what the FBI did. She began to speak. You had complete power, Patel broke in, his tone still quiet, but sharp like a blade. Because the FBI did not discover the Steele file on their own. Your campaign gave it to them. Your staff marched it into FBI headquarters. When the FBI's own researchers said it was untrustworthy, someone made that judgment disappear. He knocked on the burn bag file, into this closet, and into these sacks where it rested for 8 years until I located it. The liberal activists in the balcony had gone entirely quiet. Many were viewing their devices and reading the live stream with looks of increasing worry. But we are not finished with the file, Patel stated, while drawing out another group of sheets. Because I wish to speak about Igor Danchenko. Clinton's visage stiffened. Danchenko was Steele's main subsource, the guy who allegedly supplied the data in the dossier. In January 2017, the FBI questioned Danchenko. He informed them the file was built on, and I am citing from the FBI's own records, tavern chat, hearsay, and conjecture. Patel lifted the FBI interview records. Tavern chat. The FBI understood in January 2017 that the whole file was built on tavern chat and hearsay. The paper used to excuse spying on an American national was garbage. The paper that started 3 years of probes and ate up an entire administration was gathered by a guy who had never met his alleged contacts face to face. He placed the records down gently, and they extended the FISA order 3 more times, utilizing that identical file as main proof. 4 orders total, each one needing an FBI officer to vow under oath that the proof was credible. Each one was a falsehood. He drew out 1 additional paper from this part. This is the FBI's request for the 4th FISA extension. An FBI attorney named Kevin Kleinsmith was tasked with confirming the proof. Instead, he changed an email to make Carter Page appear more dubious. He actually switched the words in a government record to keep the spying going. Patel's tone solidified for the first time. Kevin Kleinsmith admitted guilt to a federal offense. He changed proof to watch an American national, and the spying he helped sustain was built on a file that your team paid for, that your staff fed to the FBI, and that the FBI's own researchers said was useless. 3 Democratic senators rose and exited the hall. The departure had started. "Shall we take a pause, Mrs. Clinton?" Patel inquired nicely. "Because next, we must talk about 33,000 messages, and those are even more intriguing." When the panel gathered again, the Democratic portion of the hall was visibly lighter. Clinton had come back with an extra lawyer, her 5th, and a container of water she had not sipped. Her prior assurance had been superseded by something tougher and more defensive. It was the look of a woman getting ready for a blockade. Patel appeared rested. He took a seat, opened a fresh part of his binder, and went directly to it. "Mrs. Clinton, When you worked as Secretary of State from 2009 to 2013, you handled formal government matters on a personal email hub situated in the cellar of your house in Chappaqua, New York. Is that right? This has been fully examined, Clinton stated, her tone strained. Director Comey exonerated me twice. Did he? Patel drew out a paper. Because in those waste bags we located something Director Comey never told the public. He lifted a dense summary with FBI stamps. This is an internal FBI evaluation from 2016 penned by the group tasked to check your messages. Let me recite the main conclusion. He read calmly, allowing every term to hit. Probe of Clinton email hub was purposefully restricted in range by top DOJ officers. Main observers were given protection without being forced to supply statements or material proof. The Anthony Weiner computer, holding roughly 340,000 Clinton-connected messages, was checked in only 12 days. A duration incompatible with a complete forensic audit, considering the amount of items. Patel gazed up. 340,000 messages in 12 days. The initial probe checked 30,000 messages over 12 months. But somehow 340,000 messages on the Weiner computer were exonerated in less than 2 weeks. He placed the record down. Does that calculation make sense to anybody in this hall? Quiet. But that is not the most alarming piece. Patel drew out another paper. This is a rough copy of Director Comey's public announcement clearing you. It is marked May 2nd, 2016. He stopped. Your FBI session was on July 2nd, 2016. 2 months afterward, Director Comey penned his verdict before he even questioned you. Clinton's head lawyer rose. Director Patel, the order of writing. I am not done, advisor. Patel's tone was low, but held total command. The lawyer sat back down. In that copy, Comey initially wrote that your management of secret data was grossly negligent. Those are significant words, Mrs. Clinton, because under federal statute, gross negligence in managing secret items is a crime. It brings up to 10 years in federal jail. He lifted 2 papers side by side. The copy says grossly negligent, while the finished public release says extremely careless. Identical conduct, different terms, but one is an offense and the other is not. He placed the papers down. Someone altered those terms. Someone chose that a presidential hope would not be accused of a crime, regardless of the proof. The first copy with the true evaluation was meant to be shredded. He knocked on the burn bag. It was not. He drew out one more paper, a note with FBI stationery. But it becomes worse. This note demonstrates that on June 27, 2016, 5 days prior to your session, Attorney General Loretta Lynch gathered privately with your spouse, Bill Clinton, on a runway at Phoenix Sky Harbor Airport. A 30-minute talk on a private jet. Patel gazed at the panel. The Attorney General of the United States gathered privately with the partner of the target of a federal probe 5 days before the crucial session. Both sides stated they talked about grandkids and golf. He allowed the ridiculousness of that claim to occupy the hall. After that gathering, Lynch stepped aside, but not genuinely. She stated she would take whatever suggestion the FBI gave, a suggestion that Director Comey had already typed 2 months before. The result was decided before your session ever occurred. The balcony was now entirely divided. Clinton's fans had moved from applauding to quietness. The right-wing portion, smaller but getting louder, was moving their heads in obvious revulsion. Let me illustrate the full scene, Patel stated. Your husband sees the Attorney General on a runway. 5 days afterward, the FBI questions you on a Saturday, the July 4th weekend, when no one is observing. 2 days after that, Comey recites a release he penned 2 months before clearing you. Then the first copy with the term grossly negligent is sealed away in a waste bag. He tallied on his digits. Runway gathering, weekend session, pre-written clearance, proof destroyed. 4 moves involving 4 individuals who chose the statute didn't pertain to you. Clinton's jaw was locked so firm the tendons in her neck were noticeable from across the hall. Her lawyers were scribbling madly on their pads, but their look said they understood there was nothing to write that could repair this. Now, let's discuss the 33,000 messages you erased, Patel went on. In March 2015, you got a congressional order telling you to keep all messages on your private hub. A lawful order and a legal duty. He drew out a technical summary. Between March 25th and March 31st, 2015, days after getting that order, a specialist utilized a tool named BleachBit to forever ruin 33,000 messages on your hub. BleachBit doesn't merely erase items, it overwrites them so they can never be retrieved. Those were private messages about yoga and Chelsea's marriage, were they? Patel drew out another paper. Because the FBI found pieces, not all of them, since BleachBit did its task well, but plenty. And some of those pieces held secret data. Not private messages, but state secrets. He showed a picture. And then there were the mobiles. Your team ruined 13 portable units with mallets. Mallets, Mrs. Clinton, not factory wipe, not safe removal through correct government ways, not giving them to probers. Mallets. They took BlackBerry units holding state chats and crushed them into shards on a meeting desk. He let the visual settle in. For audio listeners, the visual was clear enough to see without a photo. I spent 5 years as a federal prosecutor. I charged terrorists, drug runners, and money cleaners. If any state worker, any assistant, any trainee, or any mid-level official ruined ordered proof with BleachBit and crushed phones with mallets, they would be accused of blocking justice, destruction of proof, and disrespect of Congress. 3 federal felonies minimum. They would be in shackles within a week. He gazed at Clinton. But you were not accused. You were not even earnestly asked about it, because someone chose the regulations didn't pertain to you. Someone chose that Hillary Clinton ruining ordered proof was distinct from anyone else ruining ordered proof. He stopped. It is not distinct. The statute is the statute, or at least it's meant to be. A Democratic staffer in the balcony softly folded up his Clinton 2024 pin and slid it into his pocket. The lady beside him saw and slowly took off her own. But here is what keeps me awake at night, Patel stated, his tone falling. It is not the messages themselves. It is what your charity was doing while those messages were being transmitted. Clinton's 5th lawyer, who had just come, began murmuring quickly. Clinton dismissed her. Don't you try, Clinton stated, while her coolness fractured for the first time. Don't you try going there. Patel gazed at her with something near to pity. Mrs. Clinton, I must, because the facts require it. Patel's attitude changed. The legal comfort and the rare half-grin vanished. What took its place was something the panel had not viewed before. It was the icy concentration of a national security prosecutor who had spent years making arguments against the globe's most perilous people. The Clinton Foundation he started got over $2 billion in gifts between 2001 and 2015. During the time you acted as Secretary of State from 2009 to 2013, gifts jumped massively. Overseas governments, overseas firms, and overseas persons poured hundreds of millions of dollars into your family's charity while you were making choices that directly impacted their concerns. He drew out a huge record that resembled a directory. This is a cross-reference study. On the left list are Clinton Foundation givers, on the right list are State Department moves helpful to those givers, and in the middle list is the schedule. He turned to marked sheet. Saudi Arabia gave $10 million to the Clinton Foundation between 2009 and 2012. During that same time, your State Department okayed $29 billion in weapons deals to Saudi Arabia. That is a 97% rise over the prior government. He flipped to another sheet. The state of Qatar gave between $1 million and $5 million. Boeing gave $1 million. Your State Department okayed an $8 billion Boeing plane contract with Qatar shortly after. Another sheet. The Kingdom of Bahrain gave up to $100,000. Your State Department okayed weapons deals to Bahrain even as they were brutally crushing pro-democracy marchers. Tear gas, rubber pellets, and campaigners pulled from their houses, and yet you continued sending them guns. He flipped another sheet. The Ukrainian tycoon Viktor Pinchuk gave up to $25 million shortly after he won entry to a State Department initiative that had formally denied his request. Another sheet. The state of Algeria gave $500,000 without State Department prior okay, which was mandated. Your staff didn't declare it. When reporters found it, the charity called it a mistake. He gazed up. A $500,000 mistake. He shut the directory and placed it down with a heavy sound that rang through the silent hall. I could continue for hours, as there are 154 givers in this record. But I believe the panel sees the trend. Clinton's head lawyer rose once more. These are accidents, and link does not equal cause. Take a seat, counselor. I am proving a trend. Patel did not lift his tone because he didn't have to. The lawyer sat. 85 of 154 givers who gathered with you personally at the State Department got helpful government rulings within 90 days of their gift to the Clinton Foundation. He allowed the figure to stay in the atmosphere. 85 out of 154. That is a 55% win rate for anyone who gave to your charity and then requested a session. The State Department doesn't have a 55% okay rate for anything unless you are buying entry. He stopped letting the calculation settle in for the radio crowd. Consider that figure. If you gave to the Clinton Foundation and asked for a session with the Secretary of State, you had better than a coin toss shot of getting a helpful government ruling. Better than 50-50. Not because your argument was robust, but because your payment went through. Patel drew out a new group of papers from the trash bags. But here is what makes this felonious rather than just fishy. These are FBI area office notes from 2015 and 2016. FBI officers in 4 towns, New York, Los Angeles, Washington, and Little Rock, were busily probing the Clinton Foundation for public corruption. They had built secret contacts inside the charity. They had money logs showing the specific timing of gifts and rulings. They had statements from past charity workers who explained the pay-to-play scheme in depth. His tone solidified. One contact told the New York area office, and I am reciting straight from the burn bag paper, there was a silent law. Large givers got sessions, and sessions led to helpful results. Everyone understood. Nobody said it audibly, but everyone understood. And then the Obama-Biden Department of Justice closed it all down. He lifted a note. This note from a high DOJ officer orders FBI commanders to back off on the Clinton Foundation probe. The term back off shows up 3 times. Not stop, not review, but back off. FBI officers who had spent months constructing a file were told to halt. Agents who had placed their professions on the line to chase this inquiry, not because the proof was frail, but because the schedule was politically awkward. Patel's jaw clenched. For the first time, something private flashed across his visage. I was a federal prosecutor, and I constructed arguments block by block the way you are meant to. When you tell a squad of committed officers to back off on a file they have labored for months, a file with proof and contacts and statements, you don't just murder an inquiry. You murder their belief in the structure. Clinton's face had gone from defensive to pale. One of her lawyers was quietly moving her head. The FBI officers objected, Patel went on. Several agents wrote down their complaints. One officer typed, "And this was in the trash bags too. We have enough proof to move with a complete probe." The command to back off is not built on factual review, but on political factors. I am noting this for the log. Patel gazed at the panel. That officer's profession finished 6 months later. Moved to an area office in the middle of nowhere. His case boxes were taken, and his proof was locked away. He lifted another burn bag paper. Until today, because someone kept that proof. Someone at the FBI could not stomach what was being done. They took the case boxes, put them in those trash bags, and concealed them in room B7034 instead of ruining them. He turned to Clinton. Whoever that person was, they just finished your career. Because everything that those officers discovered is now in the hands of the United States Department of Justice. The donor comparisons, the schedule study, the observer accounts, and the money logs. All of it. The hearing hall was completely quiet. Not the quiet of surprise, but the quiet of people viewing something they knew was unavoidable. Finally show up. Gifts go in, Patel stated softly. Helpful rulings come out. FBI probes get murdered. Proof gets hidden. That is not public duty, Mrs. Clinton. That is a criminal racket. Clinton gazed at Patel with a look that blended anger with something she hadn't felt in Washington for 30 years. Terror. We haven't talked about the Epstein link yet, Patel stated, grabbing for the biggest part of his binder. But I think the panel needs to see. I will not, Clinton started to yell while half standing from her seat. Mrs. Clinton? The panel leader's tone sliced through the hall. You will stay seated, and you will permit Director Patel to finish his show. This is a Senate session, not a campaign event. Clinton slowly sat back down. Her fingers were shaking. Patel stopped. He took off his spectacles, wiped them slowly with a fabric from his coat pocket, and put them back on. It was a tiny move, but it gave the hall and Clinton time to realize that what came next would be worse than everything prior. I am going to put aside one path of questioning, Patel stated cautiously, because specific issues are the topic of active federal cases that I will not harm. But there is something I need the panel to see about the connection between all of these scandals. He drew out a single piece of paper. This is a schedule starting in 2009 when you became Secretary of State and ending in 2025 when I located the trash bags. He stood up. He hadn't stood once during the whole session. The move pulled every eye in the hall. 2009 to 2013, you operate the State Department on a private server. Foreign states pour cash into your charity. Weapons deals are okayed. FBI officers who probe are told to back off. 2015, Congress orders your messages. You ruin 33,000 of them. Your staff crushes phones with mallets. 2016, your team pays $12 million for the Steele file. Your people feed it to the FBI. The FBI uses it to watch American citizens. An FBI researcher who flags the file as untrustworthy is overruled. His view vanishes. 2016, Director Comey writes your clearance 2 months before questioning you. The words grossly negligent are switched to extremely careless. The copy vanishes. 2016 to 2019, the FBI extends FISA spying 4 times based on the false file. An FBI lawyer changes proof to keep the orders live. 2019, The Durham probe starts. Key proof has already been moved to room B7034 in trash bags. 2024, the Durham summary is released, but its most damaging addendum stays secret. The addendum recording your campaign's part in making the Russian story. That addendum was in the trash bags. He gazed at the panel. 16 years. 16 years of proof being made, concealed, changed, ruined, and hidden. And through all of it, one individual stayed at the middle. One individual gained from every cover-up. One individual's marks are on every paper in those trash bags. He turned to Clinton. "You, Mrs. Clinton." The balcony was still. Even the writers had ceased keying. The C-SPAN lenses, which usually filmed an empty hall and tired interns, were taping what would become the most viewed congressional session clip since Watergate. "This wasn't a chain of lonely events," Patel went on. "This was a structure, a device you constructed, a device that changed public role into private riches, that turned intelligence bureaus into political tools, and that ruined anyone who tried to reveal it." He strolled slowly back to the desk. The FBI researchers who flagged the file as untrustworthy were hushed. The field officers who probed the charity were told to back off. The congressional probers who asked queries were painted as conspiracy nuts. The reporters who dug too deep were cut off from entry. "You didn't just violate the statute, Mrs. Clinton. You broke the people whose duty it was to apply it." He lifted the burn bag photo one final time. These bags show the soul of people inside the FBI who knew what was occurring and couldn't halt it. They couldn't blow the whistle because their professions would be ruined. They couldn't go public because they'd be charged for spilling secret data. So they did the only thing they could. They kept the proof and prayed that someday someone would locate it. He set the photo down gently, almost respectfully. Somebody in that structure looked at these papers and made a choice. Somebody whose name I may never learn. They decided that the reality was more vital than their job, more vital than their retirement, more vital than their security. They put these papers in trash bags, hauled them to room B7034, locked the gate, and walked away hoping. Just hoping. His tone fell to barely above a murmur. The hall was so quiet that the buzz of the cooling system was hearable. "My folks came to this nation from India with zero. My dad drove a cab in New York. My mom worked in a dress shop. They didn't know anyone. They didn't have links. They didn't have a charity that took gifts from foreign states. A few people in the balcony grinned through their stress. But they had one thing they trusted in. A basic concept that in America, nobody is above the statute. Not the wealthy, not the potent, not the linked. They told me that every day, every single day." He grabbed the binder and held it up. "This binder proves that for 16 years you functioned as though you were above the statute. And for 16 years you were correct. The system guarded you. The DOJ guarded you. The FBI command guarded you. The press guarded you." He set the binder back down. "That time is finished. Not because of me, because of the person who saved those trash bags, because of the FBI officers who noted their complaints, even when they were ordered to halt, because of the researchers who wrote truthful evaluations, even when those evaluations were buried. This nation still has people who trust in the reality. And today, the reality won." The quiet that followed was the loudest noise the panel room had ever held. Clinton made one final try. She stood up against her lawyer's frantic, hushed objections and pointed squarely at Patel. "This is a political trial," she stated, her tone shivering, but still holding the iron of a woman who had survived decades of Washington combat. You are a Trump fan, carrying out a grudge. Every paper you've shown is hand-picked, taken out of setting, and shown by a man whose whole career has been built on wild theories about me. She turned to the lenses. I have been probed by Republicans for 30 years. Benghazi cleared, emails cleared, Foundation cleared, Whitewater cleared. And now this man, this biased agent, wants the American people to believe that he alone has found the reality that dozens of probes missed. Her voice steadied. The old Clinton was making one final showing. This is not about proof. This is about power. This is a president utilizing his selected FBI chief to hurt a political rival. If you let this stay, no one in America is secure from government revenge. It was, by any standard, a robust closing point. 3 months ago, it might have succeeded. Patel didn't blink. Mrs. Clinton, I charged terrorists under Barack Obama. I defended broke people who couldn't afford attorneys. I was a public defender before I was a prosecutor. I have spent my profession in courtrooms, not cable news sets. I don't care about factions. I care about proof. He motioned to the hill of papers on the desk. You call this hand-picked? There are over 4,000 pages of proof in those trash bags. The panel will get all of them. Every sheet, every note, every evaluation that was hidden from the American people. He gazed at her with something that wasn't rage, wasn't victory. It was closer to fatigue. The fatigue of a man who had spent years chasing a reality that everyone told him didn't exist. You had 30 years to come clean, he stated softly. 30 years to say I made errors. I cut corners. I let the power go to my head. The American people are forgiving, Mrs. Clinton. They would have understood. But you didn't come clean. You attacked anyone who doubted you. You called them conspiracy nuts. You called them sexist. You called them deplorable. The term hung in the air, her own term thrown back at her from a decade ago. The people who doubted you were FBI officers doing their tasks, congressional probers following the proof, journalists asking awkward queries, and you ruined every one of them. At that instant, the panel leader cleared his throat. I have a message to read into the log. The hall shifted its focus. The leader put on his reading glasses and picked up a note. This morning, Senator Charles Grassley, President pro tempore of the United States Senate, sent criminal referrals to the Department of Justice regarding the following issues: blocking of justice relating to the ruin of ordered email proof, public rot relating to the Clinton Foundation's actions during Mrs. Clinton's time as Secretary of State, and plot to cheat the United States relating to the making and spreading of the Steele file, for the goal of sparking federal spying of American citizens. The hall exploded. Cameras flashed and writers scrambled for the doors to file their pieces. Democratic aides were on their mobiles with their faces white. Clinton's lawyers were on their feet yelling complaints that nobody could hear over the mess. Clinton herself sat still staring at Patel with a look that had finally completely lost its coolness. Not rage, not rebellion. Recognition. The realization of a woman who had played the match at the highest level for 30 years and had finally permanently lost. Furthermore, the leader went on raising his tone over the noise. The panel will start a formal probe into the hiding of proof at FBI headquarters, including the ways under which papers were placed in trash bags and concealed in room B7034. One by one, the pieces began dropping. A Democratic senator published a note within minutes. These are grave charges that require complete checking as no one is above the statute. Then another, then another. The terms were cautious and legal, but the signal was clear. They were cutting her loose. Patel started packing his papers carefully and methodically, the same way he'd unpacked them. He put each item back in the binder, aligned the sides, and shut it. Clinton's head lawyer managed to bring some order at her end of the desk. "My client keeps all rights and will answer to these crazy charges through proper legal ways. That's fine," Patel stated, not looking up from his packing. "The proof will be waiting." A ping buzzed on every phone in the hall at once. A reporter looked down at his screen and his face went white. He turned to his partner. "CNN just posted, they have the donor cross-reference paper because somebody leaked it." Within seconds, the panel room became a cyclone of action. Writers were running for the exits. Staffers were yelling into mobiles. The controlled destruction Patel had planned inside the hearing room was now spreading to the outside world in real time. Another ping, then another. The Associated Press verified the criminal referrals. Reuters had gotten a comment from a past Clinton Foundation worker backing the pay-to-play charges. The BBC was running the tale globally. A Democratic senator who had stayed through the whole session, one of the few, rose and addressed the hall. "I have served alongside Mrs. Clinton for many years, and I have supported her on multiple times. But the proof shown today demands a complete outside probe. I cannot in good faith ignore what we have seen." He looked at Clinton straight. "I'm sorry, Hillary, but this is larger than friendship." Clinton stared at him. The treason hit harder than anything Patel had said. This was a pal, a real ally, and he was walking away. Patel finished sorting his stuff and stood for a second. He looked straight at Clinton one final time. "Mrs. Clinton, I want you to understand something. This isn't private. I don't loathe you. I don't have a grudge against you. I have a task. My task is to follow the proof wherever it goes." For 8 years, the proof was locked in a room that nobody was meant to find. He grabbed his binder. Somebody found it. He bowed to the leader, turned, and walked toward the door. The hall was still in mess. Reporters yelling queries, lawyers fighting, senators chatting in urgent groups. But Patel walked through all of it with the silent peace of a man who had done exactly what he came to do. Nothing more, nothing less. Behind him, Hillary Clinton sat alone at the testimony desk. Her lawyers were already packing. Her fans had already left. The lenses were already turning away from her and toward the exit through which Patel had vanished. The Queen sat alone on her seat, and the seat was burning. The session ended at 4:47 p.m. Eastern. By 5, every major news channel had cut into normal shows. CNN's banner read, "Clinton faces criminal referrals after shocking Senate hearing." Fox News led with the trash bags as Patel reveals 16 years of Clinton hides. Even MSNBC, after an hour of scared review, settled on grave queries raised by FBI director's proof show. By evening, Clinton's team released a note through her lawyer. Today's hearing was a politically driven show planned by a Trump pick with a well-known history of biased attacks. Mrs. Clinton flatly denies all charges and looks forward to answering them through proper legal ways. The note persuaded no one. Within hours, 3 past Clinton aides issued notes refusing to comment on active legal issues. Washington code for "I'm hiring my own attorney." A 4th aide, speaking secretly to Politico, was simpler. "It's done, and everyone knows it's done. The only query is how many people she takes down with her." The Clinton Foundation said it was freely pausing all money-raising acts pending a full internal check. Givers began asking for returns. Board members began quitting. The charity that had once hosted world chiefs and commanded billion-dollar promises was falling like a house of cards in a gale. A past Democratic National Committee chair, speaking on background, told the Associated Press, "This is a five-alarm blaze. Everyone who was within 10 feet of that charity needs to lawyer up." The trash bags ruled the news cycle for weeks. Legal experts studied the proof on every station, every podcast, and every YouTube feed. Past FBI agents, the ones who had been told to back off years ago, began giving talks. Carefully at first, then with growing rage. One retired officer speaking to a local news channel in Little Rock on film said, "We had the proof. We had everything we required. We had contacts, papers, and money logs. And they told us to halt. They killed the case to shield her. Do you know what that does to you when you vowed an oath to uphold the statute? And the people above you tell you the statute doesn't pertain to certain people." Another officer retired from the New York field office wrote a piece that went huge. "For 8 years, I carried the burden of knowing that proof of public rot was being suppressed. I couldn't speak. I couldn't act. All I could do was hope. Today, that hope was vindicated." The criminal referrals moved through the Department of Justice with odd speed. A special counsel was named within 30 days. A retired federal judge with no political ties and a fame for thoroughness that bordered on compulsive. On Capitol Hill, the Senate Intelligence Committee released the trash bag papers in batches, hundreds of sheets at a time. Each release creating new headers, new exposures, and new harm. The cross-reference paper linking Clinton Foundation givers to State Department acts became the most downloaded government file since the 9/11 Commission report. Kash Patel gave one interview. Just one. Not to a major channel, not to CNN, not to Fox, not to any of the hundreds of outlets begging for his time. He gave it to a small station in New York near Garden City, where he grew up. He sat in a plain seat. No background, no makeup, no production crew. Just a man and a lens. "I don't take joy in what happened today," he stated. "People think this is a victory lap, but it's not. Revealing rot isn't fun." You're looking at papers that represent real failures. Failures of bodies that were supposed to shield the American people. The FBI was supposed to be free. The DOJ was supposed to follow the proof. The State Department was supposed to serve the public good, not private givers. Those bodies failed. That's not something to cheer. The interviewer asked about the trash bags and how he found them. "We were doing a normal security check of FBI sites," Patel stated. "Every room, every closet, every storage spot. Room B7034 was listed as a general storage spot. It had been locked for years. When my team opened it, they found the trash bags. Thousands of papers stacked from floor to roof." He leaned forward. "When you find something like that, your first instinct is shock. Your second instinct is rage. But then you start reading and you realize that somebody, some brave person inside the FBI, saved those papers on purpose. They were supposed to be destroyed, but somebody saved them instead. Somebody risked their career and maybe their freedom to make sure the truth survived." He paused. "I don't know who that person is. I may never know. But whoever they are, they're the real hero of this story, not me. I just opened the door. They're the ones who made sure there was something behind it." The interviewer asked what was next. Patel thought for a long moment. Outside the window, the sun was setting over the city, where his parents had started their American life with nothing but hope and 2 suitcases. "My parents came here from India. My father drove a taxi 60 or 70 hours a week. My mother worked 2 jobs, one in the morning and one at night. They never complained, not once, because they believed they were building something, not just for themselves, but for their children and for this country. He looked directly into the camera. They told me the same thing every day. In America, the law is the law. It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter how much money you have. It doesn't matter who your friends are. The law is the law. His voice was steady, but the weight of the day was visible in his eyes. I believed them then, and I believe them now, and today I proved them right. The interview ended. Patel stood, thanked the small crew, and walked out into the evening. Outside, the streets of Garden City were quiet. The same streets where his father had driven that taxi, picking up strangers and making conversation while building a life one fare at a time. The same neighborhood where his mother had walked to her second job at 6:00 p.m. every evening, tired but never complaining. The same blocks where a kid named Cash had played basketball and dreamed about being a lawyer because his parents told him that in America lawyers were the ones who made sure the rules were fair. American flags hung from porches up and down the block as they always had. They flew from the hardware store, from the barber shop, and from the post office. Small flags, ordinary flags. Not the kind you wave at rallies. The kind you put up because you believe in something. Patel walked to his car alone. No entourage, no security detail. He'd sent them home. Just a man with a folder walking down an American street at dusk. The weight of the day finally settling on his shoulders. Somewhere in Washington, Hillary Clinton was meeting with her legal team, planning a defense for crimes she had spent 16 years believing she would never be held accountable for. Somewhere in an FBI field office, a retired agent was watching the hearing replay, tears streaming down his face, finally seeing the evidence he'd been ordered to forget, presented to the world. And somewhere nobody knows where the person who had saved those burn bags was watching too. Anonymous, unknown, the bravest person in this story who would never receive credit and never be thanked. Watching the truth they had protected finally set free. The burn bags had been opened. The truth was free. And for the first time in a very long time, accountability had come to Washington. The evidence had spoken, and the evidence was devastating.